The morning fog hung low over Rosewood Hills Cemetery, clinging to gravestones like breath on glass. Evelyn Mercer stepped out of the sleek black car without a word, the driver staying respectfully inside. Her heels sank slightly into the damp earth, but she didn't notice. All she saw was the headstone, a head simple, unadorned, chosen in haste but now seared into memory. Caleb David Mercer, 1995, 2024, loved beyond words, lost beyond reason. Evelyn stood motionless, arms folded tightly across her chest. The wind played with the silk scarf around her neck, but she didn't fix it. 1 year, it still felt like a mistake, a cruel, administrative error. Her son, only child, should have outlived her, not ended up buried under granite and soil. She knelt, brushing away a small leaf caught at the base of the stone. A fresh ache pulsed in her chest. "I wasn't ready," she whispered. "I still don't know what happened." Behind her, the stillness broke, soft, uneven breathing, a stifled sob. Evelyn turned her head slightly, frowning. At first, she saw no one. Then, through the veil of morning mist, a figure came into focus barely 20 yards away. A woman sat on a worn wooden bench beneath a gnarled oak tree, her back bowed low. A young boy leaned into her side, his arms around her waist. Both were still, as if frozen in a moment of private sorrow. Evelyn straightened, brushing her coat smooth. Something about the scene tugged at her. The woman, young, maybe late 20s, wore a faded coat and jeans. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun. The child, no more than 5, gripped something in his small hands. She couldn't quite make it out. They didn't see her, or if they did, they didn't care. The woman's shoulders shook once more. A quiet gasp escaped her lips. Evelyn took a step forward, then stopped. She wasn't sure why. They're not near any of the other graves, she thought. What are they doing here this early? The child looked up suddenly right at her. Wide, solemn eyes. Evelyn felt a strange jolt in her chest. There was something oddly familiar in the shape of his face, the tilt of his brow. She turned back to Caleb's grave, suddenly unsteady. "It's just your mind playing tricks," she told herself. "You're seeing ghosts and strangers." Still, her gaze drifted again. The boy was now holding out an old baseball glove. Weathered, brown leather, torn at the stitching near the thumb. Her breath caught. The glove. Caleb's glove. She had donated it to charity last year, unable to bear seeing it in the house. Evelyn's heart began to pound. The woman rose slowly, brushing her son's cheek, preparing to leave. But Evelyn stepped forward this time, just enough to make herself visible. The woman froze. Her eyes met Evelyn's for the first time. Neither spoke. And in the silence between them, something unspoken began to rise. Evelyn didn't move at first. Neither did the woman. The child clung to her leg, eyes darting between them. The wind stirred, again, brushing strands of hair across the woman's cheek. She blinked, once where Leon reached down to gather her son's things, but Evelyn stepped closer. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to startle you." The woman hesitated, then gave a polite nod. "It's fine. We're just leaving." Her voice was low, careful, measured. Evelyn could hear the protective edge in it. She looked down at the boy again. The resemblance hadn't faded. If anything, it deepened now, something in the curve of his chin, the way his eyes studied her, without fear, but with an almost eerie curiosity. Caleb used to look at her like that when he was little, like he was trying to understand the world by watching her. Evelyn's eyes dropped to the glove. "Where did he get that?" she asked, her voice softer now, the question barely audible over the rustle of trees. The woman stiffened. Her hand went protectively to the boy's shoulder. "It was a gift," she said, eyes narrowing. "From someone who meant everything. To us." The pause wasn't missed. Evelyn tilted her head. "That glove belonged to my son," she said quietly. "I gave it away after he passed." A flicker of pain crossed the woman's face. The child looked up at her, confused. "Mama, it's okay," she murmured, brushing his hair back. "Go stand by the tree, baby." He obeyed reluctantly. Still gripping the glove, Evelyn and the woman stood in silence. "You knew Caleb," Evelyn said. The woman looked away. "I did." "How?" She gave a small, sad smile. "That's complicated." Evelyn hesitated. "I'd like to understand." The woman glanced at the boy, then back at Evelyn. "Why now?" "I saw him," Evelyn said, eyes wet, "in your son's face." A long pause stretched between them. Wind passed over the cemetery, tugging at leaves, bending branches. The woman nodded slowly. "His name is Isaiah." "Thank you," Evelyn said, voice trembling. "I should go," the woman said again, reaching for her son's hand. But Evelyn gently raised a hand. "Please," she said. "Would you sit with me?" "Just for a moment." The woman searched her face for signs of cruelty or judgment or worse pity. She found only grief. "All right," she whispered. "Just for a moment." They sat on the cold bench, the weight of memory between them, unspoken truths beginning to stir. They sat in silence for a while, the bench creaking softly beneath them. The sun was climbing now, casting fractured light through the bare branches above. Evelyn kept her hands folded in her lap, resisting the urge to ask too much, too fast. Grief had taught her that silence often said more than words. The woman Maya, though she had not yet said her name, rested her eyes on her son, who played quietly with the glove near a stone angel. She spoke first. "I worked at a place called Elridge Caff. It's downtown. Fancy name, but not much more than a dressed-up diner." Evelyn nodded, saying nothing. "I was the morning shift girl. Opened at 5, cleaned until midnight on the worst. Days still had to smile through everything, tips or no tips. Rent was due every month, no matter how tired I was." She paused. "You know how many customers ever really saw me?" Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "None. Except him." Evelyn didn't ask. She didn't need to. He came in early, always early. Clean shirt, pressed slacks, the kind of man who usually didn't notice if the waitress was black, tired, or 2 seconds from tears. But he looked at me like she swallowed. Like I was a person. She blinked hard, eyes fixed on the horizon. At first I thought he was playing some game-rich man, being kind for show. But Caleb wasn't like that. He asked about my name, my kid. He remembered I liked hot tea instead of coffee. A soft smile flickered. Said I had a calming voice. Evelyn's throat tightened. She heard her son's name spoken so naturally and it almost broke her. We started talking after my shift. He'd stay late, help me wipe down tables. Told me he hated boardrooms, hated legacy dinners. All of it.
House.
Said it felt like he was breathing someone else's air. Evelyn stared ahead, mind reeling. She never knew Caleb had such feelings. He'd always smiled through their family events. Or had he? "No one could see us," Maya added, her voice quieter now. "Even the regulars, lawyers, execs say'd shoot me looks if I so much as laughed too loud around him. One of them warned me, actually. Said girls like me don't belong in Mercer circles." Evelyn turned, startled. "He said that. To you?" Maya nodded, jaw clenched. "Caleb got furious. Said he didn't care, but I told him we had to be careful. Couldn't lose my job. Or worse." A silence settled between them again, heavier this time. "I never wanted to hide," she said, "but the world made us small." Evelyn looked at Maya then, really looked. For the first time, she saw not just a grieving mother, but someone who had once mattered deeply to her son. Someone he had chosen, even if he was afraid to say it out loud. "Why didn't he tell me?" Evelyn asked, barely a whisper. Maya met her eyes. "Maybe he was scared you'd see him differently." Evelyn blinked, stunned by the truth in that. A slow breeze stirred the fallen leaves at their feet. Maya stood up gently. "Isaiah's asking questions lately," she said, nodding toward her son. "I've run out of ways to lie," Evelyn nodded, slowly unsure what would come next, but knowing something had already begun to change. Evelyn sat still, her hands clenched in her lap, her gaze fixed on the boy tracing letters on a nearby grave with his fingertip. Maya's voice still lingered in her ears, but the silence now pressed harder. Every word had cracked open something. Old, hidden something Evelyn hadn't wanted to examine. She had known Caleb was seeing someone. He'd mentioned a woman once, maybe twice, his tone light, cautious. She had smiled politely, asked no questions. Deep down, she thought it would pass. That it was a fling, a brief departure from the kind of woman fit for their family. She had never asked his name. She had never wanted to. Maybe he was scared you'd see him differently, Maya had said. The words echoed like a gavel. Falling, she looked down at her hands, pale and wrinkled, nails immaculately polished. So much of her life had been crafted to appear composed, proper, untouched by the discomfort of truth. A memory flickered Caleb at 17, trying to explain why he didn't want to attend the Mercer Foundation gala. It's all suits and surface, Mom, he'd said. I want something real, she had laughed, dismissing it as adolescent rebellion. But now she wondered, had he been trying to tell her something deeper, even then? Throat tightened. Never meant to make him feel ashamed, she murmured, more to herself than to Maya. Maya, seated beside her once more, didn't respond immediately. Her arms were folded across her chest, but her posture had softened. You didn't have to say anything, she said quietly. You just had to not look away. A gust of wind swept past, rustling the leaves. Zaya looked up at the sound and ran toward them, the glove still clutched to his chest. He stopped between them, eyes bouncing from one woman to the other. Mama, can we go soon? Almost, baby. I nodded and sat on the ground at Maya's feet, humming softly to himself. Evelyn watched him. The curve of his cheek, the slight cleft in his chin, Caleb's chin. The truth was undeniable. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a worn photo Caleb. Age 8, holding the same glove, smile wide beneath a summer sun. She held it out. Maya looked at the photo for a long time. Then, slowly, she reached for it. Their fingers brushed to women. Once strangers, now bound by a quiet truth too heavy to carry alone, Evelyn inhaled. Deeply, I want to know him, she said, if you'll let me. Maya didn't speak, but her eyes shimmered. A fragile beginning had formed. Maya turned the photo over in her hands, eyes distant. The morning had given way to late sunlight, soft and golden, washing over the quiet cemetery. He used to meet me at the back entrance, she said, after closing. We'd talk while I scrubbed down the floors. Evelyn nodded gently, encouraging her to go on. At first, it felt harmless. Caleb would sit on a crate, sipping that horrible burnt coffee we served past 9, said it reminded him he wasn't home. A small smile flickered, then faded, but people noticed. People always do. Her voice darkened. It started with the looks from my manager, the hostess, like they were trying to figure out how I got someone like him to pay attention to someone like me. Evelyn flinched but said nothing. Then my schedule changed. No warning, just fewer shifts. Caleb offered to talk to someone, but I told him not to. I knew what would happen if he made noise. They'd find a reason to fire meat, too slow, too distracted, too visible.
I had paused.
Eyes narrowing slightly, but Caleb didn't understand that. Not fully. He thought his presence protected me, that being a Mercer gave him leverage. He didn't see how his kindness made me more of a target. She looked up then, straight at Evelyn. There was this one customer, she said slowly. Came in every Thursday, some kind of legal consultant. White. Always polite, but never friendly. One night, he waited until I was alone near the register. Cornered me. Evelyn stiffened. He said, you need to be careful who you let see you. Some people don't forgive women who get too comfortable around power. Maya's fingers tightened around the photo. He wasn't threatening me with violence, just erasure. Like if I kept being visible, I'd vanish anyway. The words hung there, heavy. I told Caleb the next day. He was furious. Said he'd go to your family's legal team, expose the man. He wanted to fight for me, but I was already fading. My hours dropped again. My son got sick, and I couldn't afford the prescription. Caleb offered money. I refused. Why? Evelyn asked softly. Because I didn't want to be another secret on his conscience, Maya replied. I told him the world didn't work the way he wanted it to. He didn't want to hear that. Evelyn's eyes brimmed, but she held them. Back, he said. He'd talk to you, Maya added. Said he was ready. He left that night and never came back. The wind shifted. Evelyn blinked into the distance, the weight of her silence unraveling slowly inside her. I never got to hear what he would have said, Maya whispered. Evelyn closed her eyes. You will, she said, voice trembling. He left something behind. Maya turned, confused. But Evelyn didn't elaborate, not yet. The silence between them sharpened, fragile and waiting. The breeze cooled as the sun began its slow descent behind the cemetery wall. The golden light turning dimmer, more solemn. Evelyn turned to Maya, her voice steady but raw. I need to know, for certain. Maya looked up slowly. I need to know he's mine, Evelyn said, eyes flicking toward the boy, who now sat under the tree tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick. I need to know Caleb didn't vanish without telling me everything. Maya didn't flinch. Instead, she reached down, unzipped her purse with slow, deliberate hands, and pulled out a small manila envelope. She held it in her lap. For a moment, staring at it, I kept this for a year, she said. Didn't know if I'd ever have the strength to give it to you. Evelyn took it from her, her fingers grazing the edge. Inside was a single folded letter, creased and worn. At the folds and another slip of paper behind it, stiffer and untouched. She unfolded the letter first. The handwriting stopped her breath. Caleb's, slanted, messy, alive. She could almost hear his voice narrating the words. Mom, I know I've disappointed you in ways I can't even name yet, but this time I won't hide. There's someone I love, one who reminds me who I am, not the son, not the heir, just Caleb. And there's a child. My son. I didn't tell you because I didn't want it to sound like a rebellion. It's not. It's my truth. I want you to meet him, Mom. I want you to see him and see me, clearly. I'll tell you everything on Friday. Please come home early. Evelyn's hands trembled as she lowered the letter, her eyes glistening. That Friday, she whispered. The accident. Maya nodded slowly. He'd said it was important, she said. Said he needed to make things right, I thought. Maybe it was finally happening. Evelyn stared at the other document in the envelope. It was sealed official. She recognized the header, a paternity test. She didn't open it. I never even knew he was writing letters, she said, voice cracking. Was always so careful. With his emotions, Maya's voice was soft. He left this one for you. He said if he couldn't say it with words, he'd write it down. I didn't want to use it to prove a point. That's not what this is. Evelyn nodded slowly, still gripping the letter. She looked across the field to Isaiah, watching the boy in quiet wonder, grief, and something else stirring inside her. Thank you, she said, for holding on to this. Maya stood, brushing the dirt from her coat. Her eyes were tired but clear. I didn't want your money, she said. I just wanted the truth to matter. Evelyn rose beside her. It does, she said. It finally does. And for the first time, Evelyn stepped forward, not away. The drive back was a blur. The road stretching endlessly before her, the weight of the letter in her lap, the paternity test still unopened. Evelyn didn't notice the mansion until she was pulling into the long, winding driveway, the grand facade looming before her like a hollow shell. The same marble floors, the same towering pillars, the same empty rooms where echoes used to belong. She stepped out of the car and into the cold, the silence of the house seeping into her bones. The place felt so wrong, so foreign. For the first time in years, Evelyn realized how much her life had been a performance of success, of dignity, of control. But Caleb had never been able to perform that. He had never fit into that world, not fully. She walked through the grand foyer, her footsteps too loud on the polished marble, the house too quiet in return. Her gaze wandered to the family portraits lining the walls, each one staring back with cold, judgmental eyes. She remembered her upbringing. Her father, distant but firm, had taught her to live by the rules of the family. People like us don't mix with their kind, he had told her once, his voice thick with the weight of unspoken prejudice. His words, buried under layers of privilege, had once seemed like unquestionable truths. But now, She stood alone in the house that had been her prison. She realized how much her silence had compounded the damage. The same silence Caleb had carried with him all his life. She had never taught him to stand up against the weight of the legacy that oppressed them both. She had allowed his fear to grow, his need to belong, overshadowing his own desires. The fear of rejection, the fear of disappointing, the fear of becoming one of them. And in the end, it had killed him. Her heart ached, each breath pulling her further into the weight of her complicity. She had let him believe he had to choose between who he loved and who he was supposed to be. The choices she had made had carved a wound deep within him, one he could never heal. Evelyn sank to the floor, tears falling freely now, tears that had been held back for too long. The envelope arrived in the afternoon mail, folded and water-streaked from the rain. Maya nearly tossed it aside with the usual flyers and discount coupons, but the school district seal caught her eye. She tore it open with one hand while holding a pot on the stove with the other. She read the first line once, then twice. Your child's enrollment record is incomplete. Please update the father's identity and racial background to avoid administrative discrepancies. Her hand tightened around the paper. Isaiah was humming in the living room, drawing with his markers on the floor. The innocence in his voice, cut sharper than any insult at first, Maya thought it was some kind of clerical error. She called the school. Secretary transferred her to a counselor, answered with syrupy politeness and a strained patience that made Maya's skin crawl. We just want to make sure Isaiah is categorized correctly for reporting purposes, the counselor said. Sometimes children with incomplete files fall through the cracks. Categorized, Maya asked. For state metrics. Down the line, it helps to clarify the father's race, especially in mixed cases. Maya felt the heat rising in her chest. His father is black and white. His name was Caleb Mercer. The line went quiet for a beat too long. Oh, the counselor finally replied. Well, it's just that there's no record of that on file. No signature, no declaration. Maya bit the inside of her cheek. Because he's dead. Yes, I see that here. But without legal paternity established, it complicates things. Maya hung up before she said something she couldn't take back. She stood in her tiny kitchen, letter trembling in her hands, her son's laughter echoing faintly. Behind her, complicates things. What they meant was, Isaiah didn't fit cleanly into the forms they had built. His existence was a challenge to the boxers, black, white, unknown. A child with no documented father, child with no place. Later that evening, she sat on her bed watching Isaiah sleep beside her. His hand rested on the glove again, his breath soft and even. She stared at him, wondering how a system could ask her to erase half of him in the name of convenience. Would Caleb always be a secret? A technical error? She reached for her phone and stared at Evelyn's number. She hadn't used it since that day at the cemetery. But something had shifted. She couldn't do this alone anymore. The Mercer law firm sat like a stone fortress on Lexington Avenue, polished glass, old money, and the faint scent of untouched leather. Evelyn had walked through those doors for years without ever feeling the cold that now clung to her skin. She didn't wait for an appointment. She stepped off the elevator, heels echoing sharply across the marble floor, and marched straight into the corner office that had once belonged to her late husband's most trusted associate. Lawrence Winthrop looked up from his desk, startled. Mrs. Mercer, I want to see my son's will, Evelyn said flatly, not sitting. His smile faltered. I don't believe there was one officially. Don't lie to me, Lawrence. Her voice was ice. He wrote something. I want to see it now. Lawrence shifted in his seat, lips thinning. There was a draft, he admitted. Caleb came to me discreetly. He didn't want it filed yet, said he needed time to speak. To you first? And he died before he could. Yes. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. And yet it was never mentioned. Lawrence hesitated, then folded his hands. Because what he requested wasn't prudent. Define prudent. Lawrence stood, walked to a cabinet, and retrieved a file. He opened it slowly. He asked for a portion of the Mercer Trust to be placed in the name of Maya Henderson, and her child Isaiah. He named the boy as his son. Evelyn's heart clenched. And you buried this? You chose not to act? On it, we. Her voice was rising now. Who is we, Lawrence? He didn't answer. Evelyn stepped forward. Her eyes were sharp, unforgiving. You buried my son twice, she said, her voice low and furious. First in that crescendo, then with your cowardice. Lawrence looked away. You were afraid of a scandal, she said, afraid that a Mercer loving a black woman would taint the family name. So you erased his truth, you silenced him. Looked up, Evelyn. These things are complicated. Families like yours, don't you dare finish that sentence. The room pulsed with silence. She took the file from his desk without asking. I'm done protecting this family's comfort, she said. My son died trying to live honestly. Won't fail him again. She turned, heels striking the floor. With purpose, her hand gripping the will like a weapon, her legacy finally facing the light. Outside, she pulled out her phone. She dialed Maya. We need to meet, she said. They met again where it all began. The cemetery was quiet. The sky washed in muted grays, clouds heavy with the promise of rain. Evelyn stood beneath the same gnarled oak tree, holding a folder close to her chest. Her lawyer stood a few paces. Behind her, briefcase in hand but silent, eyes lowered out of respect. Maya approached slowly, Isaiah clinging to her hand. Her eyes were wary, but not afraid. She had no idea what Evelyn intended, only that she had asked, with a voice neither demanding nor cold, but honest. They stopped a few feet apart, the graves just behind them. The same bench waited nearby. Evelyn met Maya's eyes. Thank you for coming. Maya nodded. You said it was important. It is. She opened the folder and handed Maya a small stack of documents. Maya took them with hesitation, scanning the first few lines. Her eyes widened. What is this? A new will, Evelyn said. Signed, legal, binding. Maya looked at her. Isaiah, Evelyn said gently, is named as Caleb's son. I've established a trust in his name, education, healthcare, and beyond, not charity.
Pity.
Legacy. Maya's mouth parted slightly. Caught between disbelief and something deeper, relief mingled with grief. I've also included a public statement, Evelyn added. From the family, honoring Caleb's wishes, and naming you both. Maya blinked hard, swallowing. I can't undo what's already been done, Evelyn said. But I can stop the silence from swallowing him whole. She turned, kneeling. In the grass, her coat gathering dew, she reached out to Isaiah, who shrank back slightly, unsure. Evelyn smiled softly. Hi, sweetheart, she said. I know you probably don't remember me, but I knew your dad very well. He loved you. So much. Isaiah's eyes flicked to his mother, who gave a small nod. Slowly, he stepped forward. Evelyn held out her hand. He hesitated, then placed the glove in it. She turned it over gently. This was his favorite thing in the world when he was your age, she said. I'm glad you have it now. She reached into her coat and pulled out the photo Caleb at 8 years old. Holding the same glove, sunlight in his hair, Isaiah looked at it, then up at her. What was his name? Evelyn felt her throat catch, but she steadied herself. Cupped his cheek gently. Your father's name was Caleb, she said, and he was brave. He loved your mom, and he loved you even when the world tried to stop him from saying it. Isaiah nodded slowly, fingers closing around the photo. Behind them, Maya covered her mouth with her hand, tears escaping before she could stop them. Evelyn rose and reached for her. There was no hesitation this time. Maya let herself be held. Neither. Woman spoke for a while. When they finally pulled apart, Evelyn turned to the lawyer. We're done here. He nodded and stepped away, giving them space. Maya looked down at the papers again. He wanted this. I can feel it. Evelyn nodded. He deserved the right to say it out loud, and so do you. I sat on the bench. As the first raindrops began to fall, Maya let out a slow, tired breath. There's still going to be noise. From your family. From people who think this is wrong. Evelyn looked out across the cemetery. Let them talk. I've lived too long inside a silence that protected nothing but ignorance. Isaiah climbed up between them, curling beside Maya. Evelyn reached over and smoothed the hair back from his forehead. He looks like him, Evelyn whispered. Maya smiled faintly. He acts like him too. Kind, stubborn, too smart for his own good. Evelyn laughed softly, the sound surprising both of them. The rain grew steadier, but none of them moved. For the first time, the ground beneath Evelyn's feet felt real. Not polished, not hidden, just true. Thank you, Maya said. For finally seeing him, I should have seen him sooner, Evelyn replied. But I won't look away again. Stay there. Mother and mother. On either side of the boy, Caleb never got to raise, but whom they would now raise together. Each in their own way, and through the mist and the weight of what had been buried. Something began to grow, not healing, but truth. And that was where justice would begin.